Have you ever felt as though you simply have nothing left to give? Perhaps you've looked at your life, at your hands, and thought, I'm empty. All I can do now is wait for the world to offer me something. It's a feeling that, at some point, quietly slips into our hearts, especially as we grow older, as life ebbs and flows, and as the roles we once played seem to fade into the background. I remember a dear friend, well into his 70s, who sat across from me one afternoon. He sighed, eyes clouded with memories and longing, and confessed, all my life, I've been on the receiving end, always asking, rarely imagining I could give something of my own. It's a sentiment that resonates with so many of us, especially as the world moves faster and we find ourselves slowing down. The idea of offering anything, be it wisdom, kindness, or a simple smile, can seem almost out of reach. Now, let's imagine for a moment. Picture yourself in a bustling train station, the kind where the echoes of hurried footsteps blend with the distant hum of announcements. People come and go, each lost in their own thoughts and destinations. Amidst this flurry, there's a man sitting quietly, his clothes worn, his posture slouched, his hand stretched out, not in greeting, but in hope. He is the beggar, waiting for a coin, a piece of bread, perhaps just a glance of kindness. Most pass by, barely noticing. But what if, in that fleeting moment, something changed? Not in the world around him, but in his own mind. This is where our story begins. The man I wish to tell you about was once known only as a beggar. Each day he found himself at the same corner of a busy market, watching life swirl around him. Vendors shouting, children laughing, business people hurrying. His days were measured not by hours, but by the handful of coins dropped into his palm. He'd become invisible to most, a fixture in the landscape, marked by need and absence. Yet, beneath the surface of his worn appearance, a quiet storm was brewing. It's often in the moments of deepest despair that the seeds of change are planted. One cold morning, as the city awoke and the market began to buzz, the beggar felt a new ache, not just in his stomach, but in his heart. He wondered, is this all there is? Am I destined only to receive, never to give, never to be more than a shadow at the edge of everyone's life? That day, something unusual happened. A vendor, an elderly woman with kind eyes and a basket of flowers, noticed the beggar shivering in the cold. She approached, not to hand him money, but to ask a simple favor. "Would you help me carry these baskets to my stall?" she asked. The request startled him. No one had asked him for help in years. Hesitantly, he rose, took a basket, and followed her. It was a small act, but for the beggar, it awakened something long dormant. As he carried the flowers, their fragrance filled the air, mingling with memories of his own childhood, of gardens, laughter, warmth. The vendor thanked him, not with coins, but with a simple smile and a fresh flower pressed into his hand. "For you," she said, "a gift for your kindness." He stared at the flower, its petals soft and vibrant, so different from anything he'd held in a long time. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of worth, not because he'd received something, but because he'd been able to give. His strength, his time, his presence. The next day, the beggar returned, but not to his corner. He sought out the flower vendor, offering to help again. She welcomed him, and soon a routine formed. He assisted her, carried baskets, helped arrange the flowers, greeted customers. The market regulars began to notice him, not just as a beggar, but as a helper, someone who contributed to the rhythm of daily life. Gradually, the vendor began to teach him about the flowers. She spoke of their names, their care, their meaning. He listened, absorbing knowledge like rain on parched earth. She showed him how to arrange bouquets, how to speak gently to customers, how to recognize what each person might need. A rose for love, a daisy for hope, a lily for remembrance. As weeks passed, the beggar's hands grew skilled. His confidence blossomed. The vendor, seeing his dedication, entrusted him with a small tray of flowers to sell on his own. "Try," she encouraged, "and see what happens." With trembling hands, he approached passers-by, offering not just flowers, but a smile, a kind word. To his surprise, people responded. Some bought flowers, others paused to chat. A few simply smiled back. Each interaction, though brief, filled him with a sense of connection and purpose. The coins he earned were no longer merely donations. They were a reflection of his effort, his ability to give beauty and joy to others. Day by day, he became less a beggar and more a merchant. He started saving, dreaming, planning. Over time, with the vendor's guidance, he saved enough to purchase a small cart and a handful of flowers of his own. Now he was no longer defined by what he lacked, but by what he offered. He became known in the market as the Flower Man. His face familiar, his hands skilled, his presence cherished. He greeted customers by name, remembered their stories, and offered flowers that matched their moods. His life transformed, not by a stroke of luck or an unexpected inheritance, but by a shift in perspective. He realized that even when he had nothing, he always had something to give: his time, his strength, his kindness. And in giving, he found himself receiving far more than he'd ever imagined: respect, friendship, dignity, hope. Let's pause for a moment and reflect. As a psychologist who has spent decades listening to stories, watching lives unfold, I see this pattern again and again. When we believe we have nothing to offer, we shrink into ourselves, become invisible, and settle into the role of the victim. It's a mindset that can be quietly suffocating, especially as we age and the world seems to value youth, novelty, and speed. Why do we so often see ourselves as victims? The answer, I think, lies in the stories we tell ourselves. Society, family, and even our own minds whisper, "You've given enough. Now, all that's left is to wait for others to care for you." We forget the power of small gestures, the value of our experiences, the wisdom etched into the lines of our hands, and the memories held in our hearts. There's a psychological concept called learned helplessness. It describes a state where, after repeated disappointment or loss, we begin to believe that we are powerless to change our circumstances. We stop trying, stop seeking, stop giving. The world becomes a place where things happen to us, not because of us. But as the story of the beggar turned flower merchant shows, this isn't the only path. The moment we shift from asking, "What can I get?" to "What can I give?" something remarkable happens. The act of giving, no matter how small, restores a sense of agency. It reconnects us with others, with purpose, and with our own inner worth. I think now of another story, closer to home. Not long ago, I met a retired teacher, a man who felt adrift after leaving the classroom. "I'm just taking up space now," he told me, his voice tinged with sadness. But one day, he wandered into a community center where young people gathered, uncertain and often overwhelmed by life's choices. The staff invited him to share some of his experiences, how he managed challenges, what he'd learned about patience and hope. At first, he hesitated. Who would want to hear from an old man? He wondered. Yet, as he began to speak, faces lit up, questions flowed, laughter filled the room. The young people soaked up his wisdom, and he left each session feeling lighter, renewed by the act of giving. Soon, he became a regular presence at the center, sought out for advice, stories, and the simple comfort of his steady voice. He hadn't won the lottery or discovered some secret elixir of youth. All he'd done was to share what he already had: his experiences, his listening ear, his encouragement. In giving to others, he found himself once again filled with purpose, belonging, and joy. It's easy, especially as we get older, to focus on what's been lost: careers, youth, energy, sometimes even loved ones. But every person, no matter their age or circumstance, carries within them the seeds of generosity. Sometimes all it takes is a shift in perspective, an invitation, a small act, a moment of courage, to awaken those seeds and watch them grow. The law of giving and receiving is not just a philosophical idea, it's a reality woven into the fabric of life. When we give, we create space for connection and meaning. When we receive, we honor the vulnerability of others. The cycle continues, lifting us all, So if you're watching this and feeling as though your days of contribution are behind you, I invite you to reconsider. It is never too late to change, never too late to discover the flower you can offer. Whether it's sharing your stories, lending a helping hand, or simply smiling at a stranger, your gifts matter. Every act of kindness, every gesture of generosity has the power to transform not just your own life, but the lives of those around you. You might be thinking, what could I possibly give? It's a question I hear often. But let me assure you, the most valuable gifts are often the simplest. A word of encouragement to someone struggling, a recipe passed down through generations, a moment spent listening, truly listening, to a friend. The wisdom you've gathered over the years is a treasure, one that the world needs. Consider the story of the flower merchant, the retired teacher, the countless others who have discovered new purpose by shifting their focus from receiving to giving. Their lives changed not because the world suddenly became kinder or easier, but because they chose to see themselves as valuable contributors. There is a profound beauty in this transformation. It's not flashy, not dramatic, but quietly powerful. It is the change that happens within, the moment when you realize, I have something to offer. I am still part of the dance of life. And as you give, you will find yourself receiving joy, connection, meaning in ways you never expected. Remember, age is not a barrier to generosity. In fact, the years have only deepened your capacity for understanding, compassion, and wisdom. The flower you hold may look different now, less vibrant perhaps than in your youth, but its fragrance is richer, its meaning deeper. So I encourage you, take a moment today to reflect. What is your flower? What can you give, not just to others, but to yourself, to your own sense of purpose and belonging? It might be as simple as reaching out to a neighbor, sharing a memory with a grandchild, volunteering, or even just offering a kind word to someone who seems alone. The world is hungry for connection, for wisdom, for kindness. And you, yes, you, have those gifts within you. As we close, I invite you not only to think about your own journey, but to share this message with others. Talk to a friend, a family member, someone who may feel invisible or forgotten. Let them know. It is never too late to change, never too late to give, never too late to find your flower. If this story has touched you, if you've felt a stirring in your heart, consider sharing it. Let's spread this message of hope and transformation. Together, we can remind each other that the greatest gifts are not measured by wealth or youth, but by the courage to offer what we have, even if it's just a single flower. You are not defined by what you lack, but by what you choose to give. And in giving, you will find yourself receiving, perhaps for the first time in a long time, the beauty of being seen, valued, and loved. Thank you for joining me today. May you find your flower, and may you share it freely with the world.